Our next speaker is Travis Washington. Washington, who earned his undergraduate degree in university studies and Africana studies, as well as a master's in education administration at Southern Indiana University, has been heavily involved in community activism for several years. Washington founded and is building support for the Hands Up Act, a bill that will enforce a mandatory minimum for prison sentence of 15 years on killer cops. Although his petition has almost 3 million signatures, it has received relatively little coverage in the media. The Indianapolis Liberation Center is partnering with Washington to advance this cause in Indianapolis and the broader region. Given that mandatory minimums are imposed on the rest of the population for nonviolent crimes, why should the police be exempt? Here to speak more about the Hands Up Act and how you can get involved, please join me in welcoming Travis Washington.
Hello, everybody. I just want to say it's an absolute honor to be here. I've read one quote, I'm going to misquote her, Ida B. Wells' Southern Horror Stories, where she says, I'm going to keep on fighting even if I'm the last Negro standing. And I've always been that way. I was like, I'm going to continue to fight until I'm the last person standing, or if I have to carry this petition on my back, I'm going to keep on going. Amistad, it has its historical complexities where I can see there's some things that didn't actually happen, like the main character was fluent in Spanish, Portuguese, and English. Even though in this slave movie with Amistad, the main character, Joseph, did something throughout the whole film. He kept on fighting and kept on looking for freedom. I remember throwing this VHS in the garbage. Yeah, that tells you how old I am, right? I remember my dad put this movie on after in 5th grade during times of, we were going over slavery. The whole class was laughing, and I was a part of it. I was in 5th grade and naive, and my dad put on the movie Amistad. And I remember crying and throwing that film in the garbage, and my dad pulled it out the garbage, put the VHS back in, and told me to finish watching the most important part. The most important part of that film was the man, even though he was in chains, he still kept his head up. No matter what I do, I always keep my head up. Even when it's 99 degrees outside today, I'm sweating today, but I'm still trying to keep my head up constantly because I want people to know that I'm not afraid of anything and I fear nothing. I want to say what got me on this path of stopping police violence was Africana studies. I'm not going to lie to anybody in this room because I have nothing to be ashamed of. I suffer from internalized racism. It's a racism that I felt that white people were superior to me and I had to conform to black stereotypes. I thought the only way to be a man in this country was to fight for our military or to be a police officer or to hold a gun. I didn't even want to take Africana studies. I can tell you that now. I grew up in the suburbs. Yes, I was surrounded by black people, but that doesn't mean I was proud of my blackness. I walked in the hallways, and I remember during Black History Month, I was mad at seeing stuff like Harriet Tubman, but I began to realize I could never answer that question until later on in life. That was just my internalized racism speaking to me and taking over. It wasn't until 2015 when I took Africana Studies. I didn't even want to take the class. I had a teacher, an academic advisor who forced me to take that class. And the very first time the professor said, the riots in Ferguson are justified. I was like, oh my God, what's this guy doing? I think he's going to get fired. Something, but to start out like that was so liberating that it got to a point where even when my ROTC class was not as educated as I am now, when they started talking about Ferguson, and they're like what they are, chaos destroying their own neighborhoods, I was like, it was justified. That's all I kept on saying in class. It was justified. It was justified. That's all. I had no answer. Then during that summer, I never gotten injured. I was an athlete, never got injured before. But I've earned badges. I was in the Army Ranger Challenge. I still wanted that military identity. I remember hurting my calf, and during that summer, I really, really, really wanted to just play video games, right? My TV broke, and I was so angry. I ended up throwing something, and it hit a light. It was like a movie. A light shined over this thing called Slave Narratives. It was like a movie, like, ah! It was a glowing light over this book. I was like, darn it, I guess I got to read all summer. But every single time I was reading Sojourner Truth, Nat Turner, Frederick Douglass, Harriet Jacobs. I became more and more and more educated, and I began to liberate myself through reading. And I told, and Ellen William Craft, for a lot of people don't know, that's actually my favorite slave narrative. It's based upon white people who were enslaved in Louisiana. The following facts are sufficient to prove he who has the power to trample the sacred rights of the weak shall do it no matter the color of their skin. To see that a white person during times of slavery jumped out of a window rather than deal with the sexual abuse and the trauma of slavery really woke me up to the consciousness that this is a universal problem. And the slave narrative I hated the most was Frederick Douglass, because he used so many big words, I was infuriated. Every single page I had to highlight, go to the dictionary and come back. But that showed you how ignorant I was. And I began to realize during this time, the people, I don't even like to use the word slave. I like to use the word enslaved. We're still educated. I began to realize even that Turner slave narrative, he used the word trifling. I thought that was a new slang that was used in 6th grade. Whole time that word was created in the 17th century. So this idea of challenging my mind began to make me open up. I no longer had that colonized mind. Right after Terrence Crutcher was shot unarmed, the individual, the police officer, his murderer was let go. I remember I cried. And Dr. Lockett said, stop crying. And he opened up the Africana Stories library and said, start reading. And that, I thought I reached the limit, but I kept on going and kept on going. I began to challenge my colonialistic mind even more. I began to realize that something had to be done. I remember my brother dropping me off at the train station, and I was riding him when we were driving past a cop car, and I've always had this mandatory 15-year prison sentence in my mind. And then Father Brown once told me, why are you waiting to be in a position of power to do what's right? And I am a very religious person. I don't care if you're Buddhist, I don't care if you're atheist, Hindu, Muslim, or Jewish. We are all surrounded by the one thing and one thing only. We want to treat others how we want to be treated. And I tell people, and I'm going to tell you this, whether you believe in the spiritual world or not, after I wrote the petition, I had a spiritual feeling that I've never felt before, that I can never explain. On that train station, an out-of-body experience, right before I posted it, I felt the pain, the trauma, and also the liberation. And I heard the voice of what Dr. King said. I heard the voice of Jesus, still to fight on. And that's when I posted a petition. I sent it everywhere. And when I say everywhere, everywhere. I emailed senators twice. I've had people tell me you're using emotional blackmail, but I kept on going and kept on going. To me, what I want to let everybody know is that we are in times where there are people that don't want to accept change. Some people are so determined, or to go back with the Bible, I always say for a lot of white Americans, they worship whiteness more than they worship God. Whiteness is their golden calf. I want to say in the Bible, just like the golden calf that made sacrifices, for people in this room, during our colonial era where we colonized the Philippines, we put 200,000 people in concentration camps and put Asians in petting zoos. We lynched 5,000 Mexicans. During our invasion of Iraq, we murdered 1 million Iraqis. And then Dr. King, we murdered Dr. King. The FBI murdered Dr. King. The FBI murdered Fred Hampton. The FBI murdered Malcolm X. And I began to realize those were the sacrifices people were making to their golden calf. But I learned to let that anger go because I started reading the Bible a little bit more. There's neither no Jew or Gentile, slave, no free, male or female, for all of you are one through Jesus Christ. And I began to realize that just what Dr. King's saying, the civil rights movement was more than just making sure black people get their dignity. It was also to relieve white people, for example, of that hatred. And it was to also relieve Latino people, indigenous people, and black people to say that we can all come together. And when I tell people that the petition to me has become more than just, it's become more than just me trying to prove people wrong. It's became more than that. It's all about us. and freeing people from the fear of police brutality. I'm no stranger to police brutality. My father's cousin had his testicles tased by a Chicago police officer. He was forced to admit to a crime he didn't commit. This cop's name was John Burge. John Burge was a police officer for 30 years. 2020 of January, I spend every year New Year's with my grandma. We drink champagne and count like the hours. And I remember waking up and watching this WGN news segment. Even though this man died, John Burge died, he was arrested. There were people just getting out of prison after 20 or 30 years. And I began to realize that to look deeper in Dr. King's speech, we understand the Dr. King's speech of "I have a dream," the big words such as little boys and little girls holding hands together. But there was a key part. We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is a victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. And police brutality affects everybody in this room, whether you like it or not. And that's why I'm so honored for every single one of you to be here with me, because we have a lot of people that are scared to go against the system. But once again, no matter what happens, no matter the sacrifices of Fred Hampton, no matter the sacrifices of Dr. King or of Malcolm X, their legacy is still here. We have right now the former FBI director apologizing, James Comey, for the FBI's past, saying it's a dark history. We have people coming out from New York Police Department. The mayor appointed a black commissioner, and behind them was Malcolm X. To think the New York Police Department was associated with the assassination, to now the mayor, a black mayor and a black commissioner officer is doing a press conference with Malcolm X behind them. The Hands Up Act to me is more than, it's about the liberation of everybody and the people who are like stuck into the system. I'm going to give you another example. Police brutality, yes, has not only plagued the community, it plagues police officers. It forces them to be a part of the system and destroys their own souls. And we have a system set up within the politicians who are also afraid to call out this system. I want to say the Chicago Police Department, where I'm from, they spent over $197 million on police misconduct cases. And I think, 116 officers have committed police misconduct more than 3 times, such as excessive force and such as false imprisonment. This police system has still continued on. And the only way to stop this system is to have accountability. Yes, there are steps that need to be taken. I'm happy those families got the money. But when you look at it, I got to give y'all my math moment. I was just thinking $60 million of that $191 million could have gone to 639 public schools and pay each social worker $60,000 each. I'm someone who used to have anger issues, but I'm not going to lie to you, I had a blessed childhood. I had the resources and the tutors to give me the help that I needed. Not everybody has that. And we tend to just throw people in jail. And I love his shirt, Build Schools, Not Prison. We just found out in Louisiana that we were putting children in solitary confinement. This system is disgusting, and it goes back. Not only does it hurt Latino souls, indigenous souls, and black souls, it hurts the white soul as well. And to me, the Hands Up Act, it can be possible. It can become the federal law of the land. There was a petition called the PACT Act that got 800,000 signatures, 800,000 to protect animals. It became the federal law of the land with a vote of 98 Senate votes, 98 to 0, unanimously. Easy to protect animals, but when we talk about protecting people's lives, it's a problem. And I have to mention these names that wherever I go is Andres Godoro, Adam Toledo, Shamar Rosso, Terrence Crutcher, Philando Castile, Alton Sterling, Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Jacob Blake, Michael Brown, Antoine Rose, Ayanna Jones, Daniel Shaver, Marcella Stinnett, Jalen Walker, Frederick Kohler, Stephon Clark, Tony Robinson, Donovan Lewis, Aiden Murray, Tarika Wilson, and Gary Harrell. Gary Harrell was running away, and we're in an open carry state. If police officers have a problem with the guns, why are you not advocating for gun control? Why are you putting your own life at risk? The lack of gun control, whether you believe it or not, is helping 3 people at once. It's helping it's helping only the NRA, because this is what happens. Whenever there's a mass shooting by a right-wing extremist, guess what? Police buys more military equipment. And when police buy more military equipment, it plays the fear that the government is going to take over. And guess what? The people whose biggest fear of the government take over, they're going to buy more arms. It's a three-way struggle. It's a three-way struggle. But to bring it all back together, if they don't want gun control, that's their problem. But what I'm advocating for is a mandatory 15-year prison sentence when a police officer shoots somebody unarmed. Because I'm sick and tired of worrying of whether or not to leave my home. To see Terrence Crutcher's hand on a window. To see Michael Brown left on the pavement for hours. And I tell people, it was done on purpose, a signal. But that signal was not sent here because I'm still not afraid. I don't know about you, but I'm not afraid of anybody or anything. Because this system, I'm thinking about what Dr. King said, to free our children from a permanent psychological death. Nothing could be more redemptive than that. To wake up with the other humiliation of seeing segregation signs, to now I'm walking in a room with white, black, and Latino indigenous people. Their story, their fight was won. It's time for our fight to stop this constant torture of police brutality. Daniel Shaver, who shot a white man unarmed, who was on his knees begging for his life, that officer is now, after he shot him unarmed, not only did he get off, he's getting $30,000 a year from the police department. That time that he got that money, he was 28 years old. By the time he's 60, he would have made $1 million off the Phoenix Police Department. What does that send to the people? I was never, by the grace of God, I was never sexually abused. I don't know anybody or everybody in this story. I don't know any of your stories. But to be brown or black or indigenous, to be sexually abused, and then you go on the TV screen and see somebody get shot unarmed, you're going to continue to deal with the abuse. I grew up thinking my favorite superhero is Robin. I grew up thinking I thought I was white. So I think from the white perspective, all the white people who grew up looking up to brown and black people who, if they see somebody get shot unarmed, they're going to continue to deal with their abuse. This is a universal struggle that everybody is centered around. And I want to bring this up. Since 2015, police officers, this is an NPR story. Since 2015, police officers have fatally shot at least 135 unarmed black men and women nationwide. For at least 15 of those officers, this is their second time shooting somebody unarmed. And I began to realize, what do you gain? And actually, that's not even the right question. My new idea is, how can I liberate those people who continue to let that system continue? How can I change you to think that this is okay, to commit this carnage, to commit this fear? What does that do to that individual? I know a lot of you are not going to be on my side where, rescuing their souls. Whether it's rescuing their souls or holding them accountable, something has to change. And that's why I'm coming to you. And I really appreciate you having this forum, having this time to meet with me, because we need to send a signal and let people know that change is possible. We went from legalized enslavement to segregation to now I'm in this room with you. We still have problems. Don't get me wrong. We still have problems, but the first step to address this problem is to challenge it. James Baldwin said this best: not everything that is faced can change, but nothing can change if not faced. And we have to face the reality and accept the past. Another James Baldwin quote: there's a lot of people in the black community, I will admit, that don't like to associate slavery with their history. But this is the thing, it is our history. And we have to accept this. It is a dark history, but in order to move forward, we have to accept this and learn from it, because they survived and they continue to fight. I love what Ralph Ellison said in The Invisible Man, where he said, I'm no longer ashamed of my grandparents for being a slave. I'm only ashamed for having been ashamed. I'm no longer ashamed of police brutality. I'm here to fight to cause change from police brutality. When we challenge this system, and not only that, I like that everybody's saying we have to read, we have to get educated, because when you learn the past, this system has been continuous. After Nat, and Harriet Jacobs' book, after Nat Turner's slave revolt, there was a over surveillance of Black people being together. It was illegal at the time for more than 5 Black people to be together. And we're talking about in the 1832. And there's a movie called Detroit in 1967 where 5 Black people walking home, and they're like, hey guys, if 5 of us walk together, that's considered gang activity and police officers can pull us over. We're talking from 1832 to 1967, a system of fear of police brutality is still continuing. And I want to say thank you for having me here. Thank you, it has been an honor, and I hope to answer any and all questions. Thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you so much, Travis. While you were speaking, you made a statement of, how we went from slavery to segregation to civil rights that actually led to integration where Black workers and white workers were in the same work environment or had to work together. And I just think of the incredible sacrifice that our ancestors made to end the system of slavery as we know it, so we're not working in some field, but also how those ancestors, how those enslaved people were inspired about what was happening internationally, about what was happening. They saw what happened in Haiti. They saw, the Haitians free themselves from slavery. And so we must not forget, in our struggle here in the States for national liberation, we also have to look outside of the world for inspiration.